On a quiet Tuesday morning, Charles Whitmore stood at the edge of his late father's porch, clutching the deed to the house he swore he'd never return to. It had been 26 years since he last stepped foot on Whitmore Street. Not since the funeral, not since the accusations, not since the screaming match that shattered every last thread between him and his sister, Evelyn. But now the house was his. Evelyn had vanished from Evelyn's radar years ago, and the lawyers had finally tracked him down in Chicago with one simple sentence: "You're the last of them now." Charles hadn't cried when the letter came. He hadn't cried when his wife died, either, not because he didn't love her, but because grief had always found more private corners of him to occupy. But as he turned the key in the front door of the Whitmore house, something broke. It wasn't the scent of dust or the photos still hanging slightly crooked on the wall. It was the piano, still sitting in the same corner, still with the cracked ivory on middle C, still holding the ghost of the last song Evelyn had played before walking out for good. He didn't remember sitting down. He didn't remember pressing the keys. But suddenly the house was filled with dissonant, hesitant notes. Then, without warning, a voice behind him: "You never could play that thing in tune." Charles froze. Evelyn. She was older, of course, thinner, gray streaking her curls, walking with a limp that hadn't been there before. But her voice had that same mix of bite and beauty that could lift a room, or eviscerate it in a breath. "You're alive," he whispered. "I am," she said. "And apparently, so are you." For a long moment, neither of them moved. The silence between them stretched like an old rope, weathered, brittle, and one sharp pull from snapping. Then Evelyn broke it with a sigh. "I came for the piano." Charles blinked. "The piano?" "She left it to me," Evelyn said. "In the letter." "Didn't the lawyer tell you?" He hadn't read the letter, couldn't bring himself to. But now, standing in the very house that had once held their entire childhood and their pain, it seemed absurd to argue about a piece of wood and wire. So instead he asked, "Why did you disappear?" Evelyn didn't answer right away. She walked past him and touched the piano bench, her fingers trembling slightly. "Because I couldn't stay," she said. "And because you didn't ask me to." That landed heavier than he expected. "I thought you hated me," he said. "I did," she replied, "but not for the reasons you think." And like that, the story began to unravel. Evelyn spoke of their mother's slow decline, the dementia, the screaming at night, the way Evelyn had begged Charles for help in those final years, while he chased promotions and buried himself in conference calls. He'd assumed she'd handled it. She'd assumed he didn't care. Now, standing face to face in the ruins of their shared past, they realized the truth. Neither of them had known how to ask for what they needed. The days that followed weren't easy. The house demanded repairs. The paperwork was a mess. And the piano, Evelyn's piano, needed a full rebuild. But they stayed together. They cooked simple meals, walked the block in silence, took turns cleaning out their father's belongings, each item a landmine of memory. And each night, before bed, Evelyn played one song. It was never the same, but Charles always sat in the doorway to listen. On the 7th night, he asked, "Do you ever wish we'd stayed in touch?" She paused mid-chord. "Every single day." By the end of the 2nd week, the house felt different. Not healed, not whole, but less haunted. Charles found an old showbox of photos under a floorboard. Evelyn cried over a torn recipe card in their mother's handwriting. And on the last morning, as the movers came for the piano, Charles handed Evelyn the unopened letter their mother had left him. Evelyn touched the envelope like it might burn her. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "I think she meant for you to read it." She did, slowly, silently, then folded it back up, looked at her brother, and said the only thing that mattered: she forgave us both. They didn't speak much after that. Some things didn't need to be said. As the sun set on Whitmore Street, Evelyn climbed into the moving van beside her piano. She didn't promise to write. He didn't ask her to stay. But as she pulled away, she waved, and Charles waved back. And for the first time in decades, he didn't feel like the last of anything. He just felt human again.